What's up, everyone, and welcome to episode 237 of Spinning Thoughts. My guest this week is Andrew McMahon. I have loved the music that he has created throughout his entire career, from Something Corporate to Jack's Mannequin, and now Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness. We talk all about the brand new album, Tilt at the Wind No More. We talk about this US tour that he's on right now that you could go and check out if the date hasn't already sold out, his upcoming festival appearances, and so much more. If you like this kind of content, make sure you give this video a like, that you're subscribed on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, and make sure you check us out on all social media at Spin Thoughts. Without any more delay, let's dive into my conversation with the one and only Andrew McMahon. All right, everyone, I am so excited for my guest here in episode 237. I am a big fan of this artist throughout all the different eras and iterations of the music that he has put out. It is with so much pleasure that I introduce everybody here at Spinning Thoughts to Andrew McMahon. Andrew, how are you today?
I'm doing good, Angela. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for being here at Spinning Thoughts. And we've got a lot to cover because you are a busy person, not just with music, but you've got a life outside of this as well. So I definitely appreciate you taking the time. But the topic here that is top of mind is this brand new album that just dropped, Tilt at the Wind No More. It is the fourth studio album under the moniker Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness. It was released on March the 31st of this year. Now that the album's been out for a little over a month, Andrew, talk to me about how it feels to have this music out in the world and just what the reception's been like for you as the artist, seeing it from either like the internet perspective or talking to fans or even friends in person. What's this been like the last month with this being out in the world?
I mean, it's a relief, right? I think there's this lag time that happens between an album being written and then recorded and then finally making its way into the universe. So yeah, I'm always anxious. You know, you make these things because you are in the moment and you love it and it feels good, and then you have, like, you know, in this case, I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 or 8 months to, like, you know, be living with it at home and just hoping that people dig it. You know, I don't make a huge effort to throw myself into the abyss of reviews and social media and all that, hunting for opinions and thoughts. I mean, from where I'm sitting, the feedback's been really great. You know, it's amazing to, you know, have a record take so long to actually get out into the world. I mean, if you consider, obviously, Upside Down Flowers came out probably 2018, so it's the longest I've gone without releasing an album. And yeah, there's been so much excitement from fans, and getting to play the first few shows with all the music out there was so gratifying. I mean, it was scary, like I said, but the feeling's good, and I'm super eager to, like, be on the road with the band and get to be, you know, slotting these songs into the set list and kind of tying them to the you know, the whole world of music that's been built over the last 20 plus years.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll definitely talk a little bit more about the tour that's coming up. I think it kicks off on May the 12th. So by the time this comes out next week, podcasting world's a little weird with the timing,
Yeah.
but Andrew will be out there performing these songs live. And Andrew, it looks like a lot of these dates are sold out. VIP is basically sold out everywhere. I was even trying to, I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and we'll talk about Four Chord Music Fest, which you'll be playing at in August here out in, like, Washington, PA. But I was looking at different dates close, within like a 5-6 hour drive to Pittsburgh, and I think all of them are, like, basically sold out. But I might be making a trip to, like, Indiana or
Cool.
somewhere like that. I think there's still some tickets there. So I'm really excited to see all of that, and we'll definitely dive into the tour. But Andrew, I want to really focus a little bit more on, like, the messaging and themes of this. I've seen some people write about the album, and obviously there's press releases that talk about the introspective nature of this, and you as an artist have just, in my opinion, have always done a great job at making things so human and so relatable as a listener. So from your perspective, are there any overarching themes or messagings behind this album? And overall, like, what are you hoping for fans to get out of this fourth studio album under the moniker Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness?
Well, I think there's like sort of a meta like theme in general. All this music from record to record, it's meant to kind of be a snapshot of my life and where I am in the moment that the music's coming together. I think the interesting thing about this record is because it was such a long segment of time, and that there are songs that were written pre-pandemic and then post, and so there was this sort of desire for me to kind of find a way to one, gravitate towards the songs that I'd written before the pandemic that really fed into the moment I was in my life. Um, but I think the overarching theme is, making peace with getting older. I think to some extent, I feel like, there's certainly a deep sense of like love and relationships in this album, which is a thread that runs through all of my music. But I feel like largely because I had written the memoir during COVID, and I used the memoir as like this really deep dive into memory and into my history, and used that as a way to, I think, tie up a lot of loose threads as it related to my childhood and my cancer and all these other things. It made it possible when I jumped into writing the record and putting the record together to sort of use it as a way to do a similar kind of reflection, right? To let the album be sort of a nostalgic dive into my history, but in a way without so much judgment. I think you when you're in certain places as you're growing up, you kind of look back at the person you were, the mistakes that you've made or whatever, and you can be so critical, right? And I think the beauty of the book was I was able to make peace with a lot of that. So I think that peace kind of filtered its way into these songs and into the reflective nature of the songs. It wasn't so much about beating myself up about, being this dumb kid here or whatever it was. It was like, no, you went through this. Like, you can talk about it, but how does it relate to the present day? How does it move you into the future? And so there's a lot on this record that I think is about memory, but in a way that almost celebrates it, I think, and says like, yeah, like, you've been through this shit. Like, now what? And I do feel like there's a lot of now what in this record.
It's probably a unique experience, but maybe not solely to you, because obviously there's a lot of bands that have grown through time and continue to push out music. But with that, it kind of means that like the fans are growing with you, and it is wild because I'm in my mid 30s now, and the first concert I ever went to was actually something corporate.
Oh wow!
It really was. It was kind of like the launching point for me, and so it is unique to listen to a song like, for example, "Nobody Tells You When You're Young," because you talk about things that seem very obviously specific to you. You mentioned New Jersey, going to Ohio. You even like mentioned Wintersville, which I don't even think I understand where Wintersville is in Ohio.
I don't either. No. See, the Wintersville is in Georgia, I think.
Oh.
I wrote the song so many years ago, and whatever it was, like that first lyric came to me, and a lot of this stuff is just, you try and write with intention to some extent, but really the best things just sort of appear out of thin air, and if you're smart, you just grab them and go. And with this song, it was like just a story came to me, right? It was, and it was like, I'm in Georgia now. I barely spent any time in my life, and so I remember as I was kind of putting that verse together, I was like, well, I've got to figure out some places in Georgia that sound cool. And I think I might have even made it up, but I might not have. I think I might have like looked for towns in Georgia that had a ring to them. Um, but I mean that song really in a weird way was the most kind of third person, like because I was writing the story of this character and his journey through marriage and divorce and kind of running away from home and all that. And it's not that those things don't ring true to me. They're just not. It's not specifically about me. But I was kind of trying to write my way into this story and understand how this guy got to this place. And yeah, I love that song because it really isn't about the things nobody tells you when you're young. It's actually about the things that everybody tells you when you're young that you sort of have to just go through. And I'm a classic example. I've had so many amazing mentors in my life and so many amazing teachers and people who have done everything they can to steer me around the pitfalls uh, that I might find down the road. And I am just I have to drive my car into that ditch on my own and find my way out. And regardless of whether somebody called it out ahead of me. I mean, I try not to do that anymore, but certainly that's how I spent my first 30 plus years living.
And speaking of that song a little bit more, like, and you, like I was saying, you mentioned like these places that, as a listener, some of them sound like it could relate to you. Some of them,
Yeah.
like that Wintersville thing, I had no clue, right? But at the end of the day, like, even though I don't necessarily know where Wintersville is, like, I can picture a Wintersville for me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, when I listen to that song, like, I can just think of whatever city that feels like that for me. And it's just
Yeah.
extremely relatable. And it's one of the most consistent things that I feel that you do musically is just this relatability, this down to earth approach. And it's just always a joy to listen to. And so pushing things a little bit forward here with this album, Andrew, and I don't know what it's like for artists when it comes to their music, because I do know that there is, especially with this album, as you were saying, like years building up to writing these songs, releasing it and whatnot for various reasons. I don't know if you have taken any time to listen to it now that it's been out, or I'm sure you've listened to obviously the final mixes and stuff. But when you have listened back to it, or if you go back to listen to it, is there a song that you're most proud of that maybe, when you're demoing it out in your house or studio and then you hit, with producers and stuff and maybe it evolves? I mean, is there any song off of this album that now that you hear it and it's kind of set in stone that you really feel proud about?
I mean, not to be vague. I mean, I think I'm incredibly proud of the whole record. I don't think I've gotten to that place of full perspective yet, I've listened to the record extensively for the purposes of just getting rehearsed and learning how to play the songs. Um, you know, for me, songs like Built to Last, Little Disaster, Submarine, those songs, I think there's a weight to them and I think in the case of all of those songs, they really sort of helped me move through something. And the recording of them was kind of like, getting the recordings right was a big part of just sort of hanging my hat and saying, yes, like I've gotten past this thing, that's kind of how I look at these songs and all my songs is like, if they successfully sort of pull me through a moment and, whether that's a joyous thing or a difficult thing, on some level, all of this is about, kind of cataloging and surviving. Right. And the good ones for me and the ones that tend to stick with me the longest are the ones that found me at a piano when I was like, fuck, and feeling, I don't know if I can swear on here.
You can, please do.
But where I feel kind of grinded down, and it's the music that sort of gets me out of it. And, Built to Last is one that really was a big one for me in that. And I like that song a lot because it has no form really. It's kind of like two long choruses and a verse. I mean, even when I played that for people, they never know what to call the chorus or the verse. And I'm not usually the guy to write a song like that,
Right.
but I needed that song. And then, we got into the studio and just like, just really tripped out in the studio for a day, made it fast. Yeah, but I honestly, like all of these songs feel so, there's an earnestness to the album and that I love, but I like that it still bounces a little bit. That there's an energetic sort of earnestness to it, which I.
There's been a lot of pre-release singles leading up to the release of the album. I believe the inaugural pre-release single was Stars.
That's right.
And that song, to me, it's one of my favorite songs you've ever created. I think part of it is because it came at a time where I was going through a transition in my life with different things and different people exiting and coming in and falling for somebody and things like that. And it has just become kind of a staple song for me since August and all the way up until now. I love that it's on the album. Is there anything that just I'm going to be a little selfish here, Andrew. Is there anything about Stars that you can tell me that is just interesting or intriguing, whether it was the writing process or what it means to you? Just as a song that means so much to me, I just would be so intrigued to know a little bit of what it means to you.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing about that was, I probably cut that song at the beginning of 2020, maybe at the very end of 2019. The demo for it, there's a lot of threads of the original demo that made its way into production, because even when it was done, it felt very perfect, it has one of my favorite lyrics of all time, of all my lyrics in there, which is the stars that fell for you left holes in my roof. I just think that, to me, it really, well, it's hard for me to pin it down exactly what it means, right? I think there is this, it's a reflection on like really deep love. I've been with my wife for over 20 years now, and we've lived like very intense and deep lives together, and we've not been spared a lot, but we've had so much so much good fortune too. And I think it's just sort of this concept. I mean, the story is pretty obvious. I was being an idiot at a bar in San Juan, a town north of where I live, and we got in a dumb fight, and I woke up feeling like just a jackass, and which is like a part of being with somebody is accepting them when they're at their worst. And I think that's where I was able to connect the dots. I was in the studio with this amazing writer and producer, a guy named Sammy Whitty, and he's gone on to just create some amazing music with huge artists. And we wrote kind of the track first. We kind of it was like we had this drum beat, and I was on the mellotron and the keys, and I want to say we even came up with that sort of ethereal backup vocal kind of thing that you hear throughout the track before anything happened. And then I just dove into the words, and I was like, I have this story about that just happened 2 nights ago, me and this club being an asshole, but I also had the lyric, the stars that fell for you left holes in my roof. It was all kind of in the same journal. And the beauty of just starting to try and tell the story is how do you make that count? We were holed up in the corner of a cowboy bar, how do I connect the dots? And for me, it's a lesson that I've learned a lot throughout music, is if you want to tell a hard story, you have to find the love in it somewhere, right? You have to make it. If you just get down in the dirt, for me. I need the hope. I need the lift. I need the way out. And by the time we got through the first verse, I had that lyric, "The stars that fell for you," and I was like, "I've got it. Let's go." And it just went. And the song wrote itself. I mean, it was him and I in a room for an afternoon. It was basically done by the time I left, and we just came back and dressed it up and finished the demo. But yeah, I get why people connect to it regardless of where they're at in a relationship, if they're in or they're out, or because it really is just about carrying something for someone that's deep, and it hits different in that bridge. A world without color is a world without you. If you're with them or you're not, it hits, and I love that about the song.
Yeah, and that particular lyric, "A world without color is a world without you." I used to play this game with this person who is in my life, and we would share a song and try to guess what our favorite lyric was from the song. And that's the lyric that we both landed on and found with each other. So really awesome, and I appreciate you kind of pandering to me a little bit.
No, that's what I'm here for, man. Come on.
Now, talking a little bit more about the songs, but from a broader perspective. A question that I do tend to ask a lot of artists, because for some reason this does intrigue me a lot, and sometimes there is a formula to it, sometimes there's literally nothing, and that's more than fine. But the track listing, the layout from start to finish, is the thing that always seems to get me thinking. It's what stays with me. I wonder if it's intentional, if there's a psychological thing, if there's supposed to be an ebb and a flow. And you have a lot of high energy moments on this album, and certainly there are some low energy, not in a bad way, but just low energy moments sprinkled throughout. What was the process like for you determining from start to finish how these tracks would lay out? Was it organic, or was there a lot of like thought and intention put behind it?
It is, for me, the closest I get to torture is putting a track list for an album together. And I think that a part of that is just, having grown up in an era where you didn't have the ability to skip songs, right? You weren't, and I was largely sort of starting to listen to music on cassette when I was a kid, right? And so how the track list played out, in a lot of ways, you're selling people on wanting to keep listening, and you're selling people on, wanting to stick with a certain song, right? And so, to me, it's a painstaking process. I go into it sometimes with, I think these would be good opening tracks. You kind of like, I kind of start in some ways like, well, what would be a great closer? What would be a great opener? But it changed a lot, and I you can talk to my manager Ryan about this, because they were on me so hard because we had to get the vinyl pressed. That was really the big thing. Like, I could have gone longer, but we needed the vinyl to get pressed, and we needed the layout for the vinyl to get done. And so it took me about a week and a half. And in that week and a half, I probably listened to the album, 500 times, to some extent.
Yeah.
And and so the answer is yes. In this, I couldn't give you every specific reason why for every song in a certain order, but you want something to hit big out of the gates. I think "Lying on the Hood of Your Car" is the first song on the record, and I liked that, and it became sort of a part of the architecture, because I had "Lying on the Hood of Your Car" as the start, and then we have "Smoke and Ribbons" as the end, and the last lyric of the record is "With the windows down, we watch the road escape," or road erased, I should say. And I loved that. And so I was like, okay, how do we now what do we do? And a lot of people were frustrated with me internally in my camp because they thought "Smoke and Ribbons" should be higher up in the track listing. And I was like, look, it's a great song. People are going to find it if they like. I was like, let's put it out as the focus track around the release of the record, and that'll solve our problems. But yeah, and then it's all about using the ballads as tent posts to bleed off energy when it builds up, and then find a way to get back in right out of them. And so that was another big thing to figure out. The other one was like with a song like "New Friends," which is like a little bit of an outlier as far as like the energy and the lyrical content. That became a really hard thing for me to do, was to find where to put it. And I think I want to say put it after maybe Built to Last. I was like, okay, cool. Like maybe, yeah, I think so. I don't know. I can pull it up, but but you get the idea. I mean, these are all, yeah, it's a very, very painstaking process. And you also want the lyrics to match. So, and that, like, I wanted these threads of like, where, I look at a lot of these records are really in some ways telling the story of my wife and I. I think because she's like my closest, she's my mirror in a sense, and we sort of reflect each other back. And so I want the songs and I want the records to sort of also map our journey. And that's a big factor too.
I love that. And thank you for taking the time to explain some of that. And I know it's very dynamic and complex. And this next question, I don't know if you have any semblance to this yet. And it's also quite anecdotal, I'm sure. And maybe you'll get a better perspective of this when you're out on this US tour that's kicking off here pretty soon. Are there any songs that you're noticing that fans are really attaching to that is surprising you? I mean, obviously you have like the 5 pre-release singles, and those get to like percolate for quite some time. And that's maybe part of the reason why Stars is such a amazing song to me, is I've had so much time to really listen to it and get to love it. Are you seeing anything like either on the internet or I think you've played some shows. You were in Australia recently, I think. Are you noticing any song off of this album that is catching you by surprise that fans are really loving?
Well, what's funny to me is like I keep seeing hands raised on so many of the tracks that it's hard for me to really know what it is. It's a strange thing. I see in like I have my sort of like I don't even want to call it a fan club really, but we have like a subscription model for the fans who, for fans to get early access to tickets and exclusive content and exclusive merch. And it's a community where, a lot of people talk, and we have our own, they have their own message boards and all that. I've seen Submarine pop up a lot, which, it makes sense for, I think, my diehard fans. I think there's a lot of Easter eggs throughout that track. So it makes, that makes sense to me. But yeah, it's hard for me to know. I can't, like, like I said, I don't do an incredible amount of digging. I've been, I think, if anything, heartened by the fact that I haven't seen any of them getting dragged. Like I have that happen from time to time, even on my biggest and most celebrated records. There will be one that people will be like, I just don't get that. I remember that with Zombies on Broadway. Like, I think I don't think people really got Brooklyn You're Killing Me in the initial outlay of that album, and I was like, oh man, I thought that was great. But yeah, so I've just been kind of glad not to see anybody pop up being like, I don't fucking get that, and but again, I don't look that hard.
So I want to shift slightly, but still on the topic of Tilt at the Wind No More. What kind of input or maybe you have full creative control over this in relation to the album art? What involvement did you have with that? What does the album art mean to you, or what do you hope it portrays to those who are seeing it? And like I mentioned to you off the air, I ordered 2 vinyl copies of that album, and I can't wait to have it sit behind me, like the Jack's mannequin behind me too. Is there anything about that album art that means anything to you, or anything you'd like to share about that?
Very much so. I mean, a part of the journey of 2020 up until now. I mean, that I was doing a lot of like very deep work. Obviously, the memoir brought up a lot. There was a lot going on, sort of tangentially in my family and as it related to the book, and in sort of, I guess the best whatever. I'll just come out and say it. I was definitely sort of, not, I don't want to say regularly, but there were sort of these quarterly or every once or twice a year kind of going on these deep sort of psychedelic therapeutic journeys that really, were paradigm shifting for me. And they helped me process a lot. They helped me move through a lot of, stored anger and pain and things that I had spent a lot of years in therapy trying to break through, and in a lot of ways thought I had, and didn't realize until I sort of went down that rabbit hole, so to speak, that they were there. But it was really monumental for me. Um, and I think as I was working on this music, uh, I think just the idea of psychedelics in general was a huge sort of boon to my creative process, and I wanted the artwork for this record. Obviously, my aesthetic for years has been very boxy and clean lines, and I wanted it to be a little messier. I wanted there to be some sacred geometry in the mix, and I wanted there to be a sense of the vibrant kind of colors that are available to you in those psychedelic spaces. And I sought out Tyler, the artist who has been doing our poster art and the single art. This guy Tyler Spangler, he's out of Orange County here, and as I was doing these deep dives, trying to figure out what the language, the visual language would be for the record, I came across a lot of his work. I create these Pinterest boards, and it just so happened that a lot of the art that I was flagging was his, and didn't even realize it. And I went to him and I said, look, I want this to be some updated version. Like I mean, I'm not trying to do like a classic '70s psychedelic kind of informed thing, but I wanted there to be a modern take on that really spoke to the themes of the record. Love, surviving, memory, just all of those, and wrap them up. And I don't know, maybe a few months into our sort of journey together with him doing the single art and us kind of getting our visual language locked down, he sent an early version of the record, which was these two hands interlocked, right? And it was beautiful. The first version doesn't have the art on the arms, and they're actually horizontal, and it's very muted. And I was like, that's it. Like you're there. Like this is some version of this is the album cover. Twist it up a couple times and just see what comes back. And the next thing he came back with was the album cover. He had just all of the art on the arms, and I, selfishly, it was like, that's the thing I've seen on my arms in the midst of these sort of deep dives into, into the sort of hallucinating world that I've visited on a handful of occasions through this process. And I was like, I'm there. And I loved it because it's like, is somebody pulling somebody up? Are they pulling them down? Are they, you don't know what that is. And I think that there's beauty in the ambiguity of the cover, but I love that it just pops, and it is, I might be able to say at this point, it might be my favorite album cover right now.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and I don't know why. Obviously, the colors I think is what makes me think of this. But another one of my favorite songs of yours is Synesthesia, and that album cover just kind of gives me, like, it reminds me of just the definition of synesthesia, and then it makes me want to go back and even listen to that. What was it, a 4-song EP right at the beginning of you kind of.
I love that record.
I shared that with so many people, Andrew. I can't even tell you. I couldn't get more people to listen to it. But yeah, the album cover is gorgeous. If anybody listening hasn't seen it, you got to go and see it, and obviously listen to the album. It's been out since March the 31st. And transitioning gears here a little bit, Andrew, we've teased this a little bit. You're going to be out on tour starting May the 12th, and this is in support of Tilt at the Wind No More. It kicks off in Wilmington, Delaware, and it's running all the way until the end of July. You've got a few appearances on different festivals. One is the Sad Summer Fest, which is just becoming one of the beloved music fests in the pop punk, indie kind of scene. So it's really awesome to see you on there. I'm curious, somebody like you that, as I mentioned, the first concert I ever went to was something corporate. You've been doing this for a long time. How do you prepare, both mentally and musically, for a tour like this? And I'm also curious, how does it compare to how maybe you used to prepare for tours? Is there any similarities, or have you kind of evolved a little bit in that space as you've grown as a musician yourself?
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest difference between the Wilderness projects and my previous is sort of the emphasis on production on these tours, and that doesn't mean going and blowing a bunch of money and having a lot of flashy lights. For me, it's about creating moments, creating a visual on stage that puts fans into another world. I think that uh, there's a lot that can be done just by setting up the stage to bring the band into the fold, to say we're doing this now. We're not just playing a show. We're playing this show, right? We're doing this tour, and that's not something that we really did in Jack's Mannequin and Something Corporate as much. It was, and I think that a lot of those were sort of market forces too. It was we were coming out of scenes that those kinds of ideas weren't really typical in club and theater shows, and it's something that I've really invested in a lot, and that's a big part of my preparation, is making sure that visuals for the stage, making sure that that world is going to be beautiful and weird enough that when a fan walks into the room, they're like, I'm here at this thing. So that's different. I think just from a preparation standpoint, it used to be like I'd write these songs and be like, okay, let's go to band practice. We'll play it. We'll practice, and then we'll go on stage. I think I drill a lot harder into the specific arrangements from the record than I used to. If I played it on the album, I start by learning how to play it exactly as I laid it down. Because I want that to be my baseline. I'll go and then embellish from there. But what's weird is, even as simple as some of the piano parts can seem on these records, because I'll write the song first, then I'll record the song. And I'll usually record the vocals first, and then I'll go back through the piano and really curate the piano arrangement to fit the track. It's like where I used to I'd just lay a piano down and just be like, just pile on, let's see how it goes. And when it gets to that level of refinement, a lot of times what happens is singing and playing those parts becomes a lot more tricky than even if it's simple. If the timing of certain piano parts in my right hand are really going against the rhythm of my vocal, that can be tricky. So I'll spend a lot of time just deeply embedding that stuff into my muscle memory, so that when we get on stage and are playing songs, especially songs that are new, that I'm free, that I feel free enough that I can lose my place and get back to it quickly and really give a show. Yeah. And so that's a big part of my prep now. And I did a lot of that ahead of the release shows. So admittedly, right now, the way I'm spending this week before we head into rehearsals, we're actually rehearsing in Wilmington. So I'll spend 3 days on the stage on the same stage that we're going to boot the show up at the first night. So I'll have 3 days to build the set with the crew, build the show with the band, and we know the music. And so the next kind of big thing that we'll, I think, be doing as a band when we're up there, because we've learned a lot of the new music and know a lot of the older music, is I'm going to try and really woodshed a ton of tunes that we haven't had in set lists in a long time, and do something I haven't done in a lot of years, which is I'm going to really try and make this set list pretty free from night to night and not so regimented. Which there are benefits and there are pluses and minuses to that. But I just feel like I'm in a moment where there's so much music, and something happened with this record tipping into these 9 full-length albums and all these B-sides, where I'm like, I just kind of want people to know that they're not going to know what they're going to get from night to night. I don't want them to be able to look at Setlist FM and see what we played on Friday and think that's the show they're going to get on Saturday. Maybe
Yeah.
that'll change. Maybe that's not going to work, and I'll go back to something a little bit more regimented. But I kind of want fans to be signed up for a new adventure every night, and I want the band to be signed up for a new adventure every night. And so, um, you know, a lot of that work's going to happen on stage Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah, for sure. Now, in relation to the songs off Tilt at the Wind No More, are there any, and I know you've performed obviously some of these already up to this point that we're talking, but
Yeah.
are there any that you just are really looking forward to rocking out on stage to on this run? Any that stand out to you?
Yeah, I mean, we only got to play 2 sets as a full band, on the with and play all of the songs, and we did that. We played the album start to finish 2 nights in a row, Chain Reaction. Uh, I was like really surprised to see Last Rites, like it just went off. Like there was just like that '80s sort of inspired kind of rhythm under there. There was like it was more of a bop than I was expecting it to be. So I'm excited to see how that one develops. Skywriting has been super fun to do live, and the more that people know it, the more of a dance party it turns into, which is really fun. Um, I'm working out a gig with like a rad like crank music box that I'm gonna use on either Built to Last or Nobody Tells You When You're Young. That I haven't tried before, and it's going to be some new kind of choreography to figure out how to sing crank a music box, and so I'm curious about that. Yeah, I mean, I try not to. I mean, honestly, I try not to go into anything with expectations any longer. I know and that's not like a defeatist thing. It's just I found that the more expectation I attach to anything in my life, the easier it is to be disappointed, and the less available you become to spontaneous magic that you could never plan for. And I tend to find it's best I just prepare, and I'm hoping that if I can make the set list unique enough from night to night, it's going to set off moments that are unexpected, and maybe I'll start curating sets based on how those moments play. But I think the thing I'm most excited about is just to experiment and have all these new songs to slot around the older songs, and really try and figure out a sort of language between things that go as far back as the early Something Corporate records into this era, and it's always nice when you get new music because you can figure out how other songs in your catalog interact with the new music, which I'm
Absolutely. And we mentioned this a little bit earlier as well, but it was recently announced that you'll be performing at Four Chord Music Festival in Pittsburgh, or Washington, PA, technically at Wild Things Park on August 12th. This is a fest that is actually put on by a good friend of mine, Rishi Ball. He's also,
cool.
Yeah. He's also in the band Eternal Boy. So go check them out, everybody listening. Some of the other bands that are going to be there: Yellow Cards performing Ocean Avenue, I think in its entirety, Taking Back Sunday, the Gaslight Anthem, Alkaline Trio, Streetlight Manifesto, American Football, and a ton others.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a ton, dude. And I don't know if you've had a chance to look at this 2-day fest and see it. You're on the first day, I believe. But just even hearing some of these bands like Yellow Card, Taking Back Sunday, Gaslight Anthem, are there any that you're just as assuming a fan of music that you think's pretty cool to be on the stage with, or to maybe even get a chance to listen to? I don't know if you get these chances, especially because, well, this will be kind of like a one-off show unless you have other things happening, I guess. But do you get a chance to listen to these bands on fests? And if so, like,
oh yeah, it's my favorite thing about going to playing festivals is getting to go see the music. I mean, I'm bringing my whole family to Bonnaroo with me because Sylvanessa is playing the night before, and we're obsessed. And it's like, oh my gosh, well, cool, I get to get us all in, and we get to go see Sylvanessa, and nice. Sheryl Crow's playing after me, and I grew up on Tuesday Night Music Club, and
wow.
No, I absolutely, it's the greatest gift of playing so many of these festivals, how many bands we get to see. so yeah, I'll be stoked to see Gaslight Anthem. I've never seen them play live, and was a fan of those records. I toured with Yellowcard. Something Corporate and Yellowcard did a legendary co-headline tour back when Ocean Avenue came out, and we were sort of, just. I mean, I think we had officially gone. We might have even been on hiatus by then, or were about to go on hiatus. Um, and it was just the most insane party for 6 weeks on the road, and some just amazing memories off that tour. So I'll be super excited to see those guys. We will have just done the handful of shows we're taking back on the Sad Summer.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun to, I'm sure, reconnect with them. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's going to be a barn burner.
Yeah, for sure. So Sad Summer, 4 Chord, lots of really good fests coming up, going to various cities. And then the last thing that I just really want to talk about here before we wind down in this episode, still on the topic of live performances, you're going to be performing at When We Were Young Fest on October 21st. Yeah. And this is with Something Corporate. So, and I haven't kept track, but this isn't the first like one-off show with Something Corporate. I feel like you've done one somewhat recently. I could be wrong there. But overall, I mean, how does it feel for you to get back and do Something Corporate stuff and perform those songs under that name? Knowing, I'm assuming that that so many people, Andrew, just go back to those times and think about life back then, and just still feel the nostalgia and the love that life had, the innocence back then. Almost, it makes me feel like, how does it feel to go up there and do that and know that so many people are just like connecting with you on such an intense level? Yeah,
I mean, what's wild, so we did a reunion in 2010 with Something Corporate, like a sort of 10-year reunion kind of thing. I want to say it was 2010. But we didn't have Will out with us on that. So Bobby filled in for Will on that one. We'd done like one show. They came out and did a set with me at a Dear Jack benefit for my charity. And then I sort of threw a 40th birthday bash for myself at the end of the summer tour. And, I didn't bill Something Corporate on the date. I put the show up and I called the guys and they said, look, would you want to come out and do a short set, like as a surprise, just learn the songs at home, come to sound check, and it's my birthday party. Like, I would be stoked if we could do it. And I also think, truthfully, I mean, even we did it in 2010. I think for me, this last year or two has really been the first where I feel like I've had enough perspective on everything to, rather than run a million miles an hour from my past projects and be like, I'm doing this, it's like, because this project has had so much success, I think there's sort of a confidence and a comfort in knowing, like, hey, okay, I did this 3 times, right? Like, I don't need it. There's nothing to prove now, and it's not that I don't think I didn't revisit these things or get on stage with those guys for that reason per se. I think it was just I had moved on, and we'd all moved on. But you get to a point where now you look back and you go, man, that was really great. Like, I can't believe we did that, and how much fun was it? And I think the 40th birthday show for me, and for all the guys, honestly, for all of us, it was just like, it was so bad. Like, it was a surprise. The dudes rolled out on the stage. Everybody played great. And I think it was the first time I had been on stage with them since the end, where it was just like, nobody was carrying anything for anybody. I mean, we weren't a band that fought a lot or didn't like each other. We didn't break up for that reason, but there just was nothing. There was no tension. It was just like, oh my gosh, how cool is it that we're doing this right now? And I think that opened the door for us to do We Were Young, and yeah, I'm thrilled. To your earlier question, like, that we get to do that for fans, right? That we sort of get to set the table to say, like, let's dig into our memory of those days. But it's also a gift to the band. I think for us to have grown in these various directions and have stayed friends, and then get on stage and play this music that was really so formative and important towards our growth as human beings and as friends, and it propelled us into these various careers. And I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, I'm nervous. I'm ready to get to band practice so I can make sure we feel good about getting on stage. But
Yeah.
I think it's going to be amazing.
Hell yeah. Well, Andrew, look, I am so grateful for your time here today talking to you. It has been honestly a pleasure and an honor to talk to a guy who put on a show, the first show I ever went to, at a club in Pittsburgh. So from a personal level, I just really want to thank you. And I know a lot of my fans and audiences here at Spinning Thoughts are going to be so stoked to hear this really intimate, in-depth conversation. Tilt at the Wind No More was released on March the 31st of this year. We've got a tour coming up. As if I'm in the band. Andrew's got a tour coming up starting on May.
You're welcome.
Yeah, hell yeah, let's do it. I'll roadie for sure. But Andrew, I want to give you the last word here. Is there anything that you would like to leave me or the Spinning Thoughts audience with as you head out and start to put this music on the stage for people to listen to?
No, I just hope that wherever you are, and you're listening to this, that you're well, and yeah, thank you for taking the time to let me dig into my weird little world with you.
Andrew, thanks for being here for episode 237 of Spinning Thoughts.
Thanks a lot, man. Take it easy, Angela.
Once again, I want to thank Andrew for being my guest here on episode 237 of Spinning Thoughts. Go and check out the new album, Tilt at the Wind No More. And if you're lucky, go see Andrew on this US tour. A lot of the dates are sold out, but I'm seeing video on TikTok of him crowd surfing with a unicorn floaty, and it just looks amazing. If you like this kind of content, the best thing you could do is give it a like. Make sure you're subscribed on Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on social media at Spin Thoughts. Our website is thespinningthoughts.com, and we have premiere episodes every Thursday at midnight Eastern on iDoby Radio. We'll be back same time, same place. Until then, make sure you share music, spread love.